Okay, welcome everyone. My name's Peter Thompson. I'm here today to interview Eric Tweedale, one of the true legends of Parramatta rugby and a true gentleman, and we're just going to ask him a little bit about his life and his journey through rugby and what he's been up to over the last 92 years of being young. And I guess the first question is that you've documented a lot of your life, Eric, in the tale of an old wallaby, and I see that you were born in the United Kingdom. You're not even Australian, or hopefully you are an Australian. But can you tell us a little about your journey and how you started to play rugby and how you led from England to here?
That takes in 90 odd years, but I'll do my best and start off by saying yes, I was born in England. I was born in a place called Rochdale in Lancashire. My father had just served in the First World War, and he decided, and of course my mother decided to migrate to Australia as 10 quid poms in 1924. I was born in 1921, and I was 3-year-old when I left England to come to Australia. We landed in Australia, in Sydney, 1924, and we finished up buying a house in Marylands shortly afterwards, and I spent all of my younger days in Marylands. I'd never even seen a game of rugby union played. I'd never played a game of cricket at school, and I went on later on to play first grade cricket also. So
what school did you go to?
I went to a GPS school, Guildford Public School.
Okay.
GPS school.
And what high school then? Is that, where did you do your higher education?
I did my last years at Parramatta Intermediate High School. That is now Arthur Phillip High School.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I just thought there might have been a connection with the rugby there too at Parramatta High School, but okay.
Yeah. No, there was. They played rugby league at Parramatta Intermediate High. I played a few games there, but that was the only organised game of rugby I'd played until when I was 15 years old. An ugly, crusty old character came up to me one day and he said, "You look like you played a bit of rugby." And I said, "No, why do you ask me?" He said, "Well, my name's Bill Serrati. Now I live just up the road here. What I want to ask you is, how much rugby union have you played?" Now you're going to tell me that you didn't play any. I said, "Mr. Serrati, I've never even heard, I've just heard of, I didn't know that the man I was talking to was a legend in rugby union. He'd played more tests than any other rugby union forward, probably a legend in his own day, Bill Serrati, and still is. Yeah. Still with it. People still. So he took me over to a Cumberland Oval the next night. Taking into consideration, I'm only 15.
So there was no junior football. So this
was no junior football.
For 15, you went straight into senior football.
That's right. Yeah, and I enjoyed it immensely. I took to rugby like a duck takes to water, you might say.
So I know you represented Australia as a prop. Did you start off as, what position did you start off?
I never got out of the tight five. I was a second row forward early in the piece. I didn't come into the prop position until well into after the war. So I spent the first year playing with the Widden Cup. The second year, when I'd just turned 16, I was playing second grade, and before that season was out, I'd played my first grade game.
Your first grade game for Parramatta?
Yeah.
So who was...
Back in 1938.
1938, so who was that against? And you played...
Well, it was against Drummoyne, and I went on as a replacement, but I did take the field as in first grade that year when I was 16. Oh no, I'm sorry, I was just turned 17.
And did they introduce you to the hard lines in those days? Was it violent, or was it, did they said there's a young kid and then do you over, or or did you make it through?
Well, I came through it anyway, mate. I don't think I got too many broken noses or cauliflower ears out of it, but it was quite an.
So that was in front row when you played that.
No, I was playing second row. Yeah.
So it's still in a tight fight. Okay.
Yeah, in 1939, I became a permanent first grader. The following year, I got into the only representative game that was played in 1940, taking into consideration the war had just started, and as a 19-year-old kid I made it into the combined metropolitan team, which played a match against combined forces.
So in 1940,
when the war started, the rugby union continued their first grade competition right through the war, but there was no representative games played from 1940, and that was a minor representative game really, until 1945. Right at the end, after the war had finished, they got a team together and they sent it up to Queensland. But really, the interstate and international, there was no interstate or international games played between 1939 and 1946. So I was, before the war, I'd just coming up into the representative matches, when all of a sudden at 19 years old, they all stopped, and I come back into it after the war finished in 1946. So I lost 6 of my best years sailing around the seas in the Navy.
You took up rugby again?
Oh yes.
And then you had to get a job and all those types of things. You were based in Parramatta, or?
No, well, I was working for the Shell Company, and the Shell Company were very generous because most of their male staff of recruitable age was in the forces in some shape or form. And so it was just a matter of being discharged from the Navy in early 46 and returning to civilian life as normal, you might say. And I was rather fortunate. My naval service towards the end of the war was from Sydney. Well, Parramatta made the first grand final back in 1945, playing against University. We got beat, but we put up a pretty good show.
So was Ken Kearney in that team too? Or?
No, Ken didn't come into grade football until 1946. And with Lenny Wolfe, the other front row forward, Parramatta had the first New South Wales front row, which represented New South Wales as a unit.
So were you a loose head prop or a tight head, or could you play both sides?
Oh yeah, whichever side I was on, I took. No, we didn't specialise as they do today. No, even when I played for Australia, the coach said put the first scrum down. And there was the two props would both have liked to be loose head props. But we sorted it all out, Peter. We sorted it all out.
So did you used to do weights and things like that? Was that?
No, the whole of our training was done on the field. We trained 2 nights a week. We didn't do any gym work because there were no gyms in those days, or very few gyms to do it. We didn't.
So you trained at Cumberland Oval?
We trained at Cumberland Oval, yeah. But most of our training revolved around training on the field, not training in the gymnasium.
Okay. Then when the representative side started to come, so when did you play your first, you said 1940, but when was your next representative game after you came back after the war?
That was 1946, we went to Queensland. That was when...
So you were playing for New South Wales, or...?
Oh yes, yeah, that was when there was the Wolfe, Kearney, Tweedale front row playing for the Waratahs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how many New South Wales games would you have played?
Only about 13.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, very few, because the whole thing was different in those days. The only representative fixtures each year were the New South Wales, Queensland, and up till that time there were also Victoria were included, but Victoria never ever came back into the regular annual competition.
So was there tribalism then between Queensland and New South Wales, or was that's a recent phenomenon?
No, there's all. on the field we hated their guts, but off the field we were the best of friends.
So from there, when was your first game for Australia then? When did you get chosen for Australia?
Well, the 1946, that's when the international competition started again, and on the Pacific part of the world, it resolved really around Australia and New Zealand.
So your first game was against New Zealand?
Oh yes, in 1946.
So in Australia or in New Zealand?
That was in New Zealand. We played 12 games, including 2 tests.
So when was the first game in New Zealand for Australia? The first test, I should imagine. Was that?
Yeah, we played it at Dunedin. I can't tell you the exact date, but it was played at Dunedin.
The House of Pain? Was it House of Pain? Was it known as the House of Pain then, or? Well, they've inflicted an awful lot since.
I don't know that it was called the House of Pain, but it was certainly painful for me that day, because I dislocated my shoulder in the first test.
So did you play the full game, the 80 minutes, or?
No. I did it late in the first half, and then they replaced me. But up till that stage, there were no replacements were allowed. But the start of the new era, you might say, after the war, they decided that players in the first half who needed a replacement could be replaced. Not in the second half.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I might have done this in the 39th minute, so I was replaceable.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So in that game, do you remember the score, or?
Yes, I remember the score, but not that I'd like to be asked. It was 33-8 in favour of the All Blacks, but the All Blacks, when the war finished, the All Blacks immediately sent over a team to England, which they called the Kiwis, and they were by the time we played them the following year, they were a lot of hardened footballers, and we were a lot of inexperienced kids as far as experience was concerned, and they put the cleaner through us, 33-8. But we played the same team a fortnight later, and they beat us 14-10, and we scored 2 tries to their 1. So we had a team in New Zealand in 46 which had terrific talent, particularly in the backs.
So was Trevor Allen in that one?
Trevor Allen, Cyril Burke, Max Howell, Terry McBride, all kids. Charlie Easties, 21 years of age. They only.
So who was the front row?
The front row for the test in New Zealand were Wally Dawson from Manly, he was the hooker. Bob McMaster, Wallaby Bob, he was on the other side of the scrum, and I was there also.
Okay.
So that was.
So Nick Shahady wasn't there then?
Nick came in the following year. Nick didn't make it in 46, but he was only a 19-year-old kid then too, you see. The following year, 1947, early in the season, New Zealand sent a team over. We played 2 tests against them, and from that series, the team to go to the UK, France, and America.
So your shoulder repaired, and you were able to hold the spot.
Yeah. And I was the first I was the first front row forward picked, so I'm quite pleased about that.
That's good, isn't it? So when you went to England, so did you have to give up your job, or how? I mean, you worked for Shell, or did Shell being lenient again to you again, or?
Yeah, Shell were, yes. The Shell who had paid me full pay in the 4.5 years whilst I was in the Navy, came good again, and I was the only player in that squad that went to England. I was the only player being paid commercially, and the Shell company said, well, we want to encourage you to play.
So how long were you away for then?
From 9 months.
9 months. So
that seems unbelievable.
So how many were in the squad?
It was 30.
So you're all lifelong friends?
Oh yes, and we were. There was. I can't remember a bad word spoken throughout that 9 months, and that's difficult when you get 30 men together. But they were a wonderful team.
So when you were kitted out and things like that, the Australian Rugby Union, did you get pocket money, or
we got $5 bob a day? We got $5 bob a day for 9 months. It was very, very amateur.
And all accommodation paid for?
Oh well, we stayed in the best hotels. The trip to England was a lifetime experience. Although we were paid only 5 shillings a day, we stopped at every place we went to, right throughout England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, France, America, Canada, come on the way home. We had the best of accommodation, and we went to places and we met people who we would never have been able to meet otherwise. Like we were invited to Buckingham Palace. We met the King, the Queen, and the Princess Margaret. Our present Queen was away on a honeymoon at the time, and also we went to St James Palace. We went to number 10 Downing Street for morning tea with Clement Attlee, who was then who just came into Prime Ministership from Winston Churchill, and Lord Mayor's functions. Wherever we went, we were wined and dined like royalty.
So did you have to sing rugby songs?
We
used to be gentlemen all the time.
We used to sing rugby songs in the bus, but very seldom out of the bus.
So how many games did you play on that tour then?
We played 41 games. We played 30 in the UK. Now that was really the official part. We played that first up, 30. And then we went over to France. We played 5 matches in France. And then we came home through Canada and America, playing games we played games on the west coast of Canada, Vancouver, and also Victoria. And then we came down onto the west coast of the USA and played against 3 of the universities there, just as fun matches. Arnold Tankred, he was appointed as not only as manager but as coach and sole selector. Now, with the entourage of people that they have to do those jobs, at least 12 people going on a 2 or 3 week trip, they'll need this entourage. In those days, in 47, we had one manager who did his managerial jobs, coaching jobs, and selecting jobs. And he went, it was undisputed. He did have a secretary, Jeff Nasita, who kept solely to the secretarial work.
So he organised the tour, made certain everything, all the accommodations in the right place and all those things. So
the home unions did all of that.
Oh, okay.
But officially, they were the only 2 people of the managerial team, a manager and the secretary. Up we went, and we were picked up in England. We picked up a physio and a baggage man, and what they called a homes union representative, and he was the liaison between them. between the home unions and our team.
So nobody was sent home or nobody was injured and things like that in your 30-man squad?
Never thought of it. If they had to send anybody home, they would have had to send him home by ship. Because you couldn't get... There was plane travel in those days, but it was very... we were just a good trip. We were a good team. And we were the most successful team that Australia had to that particular stage. We played the 30 matches in England.
So who were the notables in that team you played with?
Well, Bill McLean was the captain. Who were the notables? Trevor Allen, Cole Wyndham, Nick Shahady, Ken Carney, Ryan Piper, I can go, Terry McBride, Arthur Thompson. They were.
So who was your halfback 5'8"?
The first halfback was Cyril Burke, wonderful halfback. Second halfback was Roy Coursey from Randwick. The 5'8" varied from Mick Cremin, who was the Randwick 5'8", a very good 5'8", and but the chap who got the job ahead of Mick Cremin was Neville Emery, who was from university and Newington College. So it was a team of unknowns at that stage, except for the captain, Bill McLean, who had been chosen in 1939 for the trip. As you know, the 39 team had to come back home without playing a game because the war had started at that particular time. So they came back home without, and Bill McLean was the only survivor of that 1939 team to be picked in 1947. There was also a gnarled old second row forward by the name of Graham Cook, who at 34 years of age was not only the oldest forward, but he was the best forward of the whole pack. Great bloke. But with results, we beat England 11-0, we beat Scotland 16-7, we beat Ireland 16-3, and we were beaten by Wales 6-0, 2 penalty goals to nil. That's a story in itself. But
was that at Cardiff?
That was at Cardiff, yes. We were 10 points down before they blew the whistle. But in those 4 test matches we played, we never had a try scored against us. So although we'd lost one, it was only by penalties, and no other team, both before or since, has ever gone through a program without having a try scored against them in the test match.
That your last time you represented, or did you play more tests when you came home?
No, it wasn't the last time. We came home in 1948, having played one match. We played France on January the 6th, 48, and that was the only international game of rugby played that year. And then in 49...
So 48 was in Australia?
Yeah. Yeah, but there was no representative games, no international representative games played in Australia in 1948. In 49, we had the Maori All Blacks came over, and we played three test matches against them.
And how'd you go against them?
We won one, we drew one, and we lost one. And at the end of that particular tour, the Shell Company and I came to an agreement that I would retire from major football. I would still play club football.
Okay.
But
so how old were you then?
28.
28. So that was your last? So today that'd be a young...
Oh, young, yes. But in those days, people had to look past football. That was totally amateur. And So you had at some stage of your life to put your family first and your career first. And 28 would have been about the average time of retiring. When the shell company sent me to Forbes, I formed the Forbes Rugby Club, and from there I captained the combined country team against City, against the British Lions, against the All Blacks, and against the first Fijians. That was in the early 1950s.
So were the scores creditable? Like when you played country, was country strong? Or did...
That's not a fair question. Well, I won't answer, but to say we didn't win any of the matches.
And when you played the All Blacks, a question I'd like to ask, did they do the haka? Were they doing the haka then? Or
Yeah, they were still doing that. Still
so the haka was in when you played in 47?
Oh yeah, they were still a fearsome looking lot.
And so from Forbes you then came back to Parramatta after?
Yes, well I played a couple of years of league because there was no we couldn't continue Forbes Rugby Union Club because of distance for about 2 or 3 seasons. So I had a couple of seasons of league up there.
You didn't get paid, did you? You weren't
No, I don't think anybody else did neither. But then I finished playing altogether. Now, when I came back to Sydney in 1957, Parramatta was going through a very similar situation as what they are at the present time. We were down on our backside, you might say, and we were threatened with relegation to what they had then, a second division. And they asked me would I come back and give them a hand out. But I was then 36, 19. So I said I would. So I captained the first grade team in 1957, and I was the first grade captain coach in 1958 when I was 37 years of age. Stupid thing to do, but the club needed me at that stage more than ever because we were.
So where was the club then? Amos Street wasn't bought then, or was that?
Oh no, not for years after. No, we were still in the old Cumberland Oval.
So was there a clubhouse, or did you drink at the Woolpack, or was that?
No, we drank at Annie's pub down near the Gasworks Bridge at Parramatta. Jimmy Boland's father was a shareholder in the Woolpack Hotel, so we had a lot of very good social events down there.
Okay, so So from there you became captain coach, and then were you part of the transformation of when they went to the Amos Street was built and all those types of things, or how? I mean, you've been coached. I've got questions here. I mean, you're a club patron now, but I also, when I was playing, I remember you used to do the best and fairest for the Sydney Morning Herald. So you've had a number of jobs. So have you been president? What's your history in the let's say the administration side? Not the administration side, but
the history there was when I came back to Sydney in early in 1957. I had to do so because my wife was terminally ill, and that shortly after that, 57, 64, Isabel passed away, and my life had to change quite a lot. And I later on in 1966, I married a girl from Seattle, USA, who I had met in England when I was with the Wallabies. It's a long story and I can't go into it now, but it meant my affiliation with the Parramatta Club. It had to finish because I couldn't keep on neglecting my second wife like I neglected my first wife. Because, yeah. But I might say that during that period where I retired, I then played quite a part in the establishment of the Parramatta Juniors, and we started a very strong competition in an area very close to Parramatta. Clubs like the Hills, North Mead, Marylands, West
Somebody told me
Mead.
you started. Did you start Club Marylands Rugby Club?
Yes, well, I started the junior union really. Because Snowy Elliott came in and helped me a little bit with there, but we just under the pressure put on me by the New South Wales Junior Rugby Union President, a chap by the name of John Carroll. He pushed me into calling for meetings all around Parramatta area, at schools, at various places, RSL clubs, and we, in the first year that we went canvassing juniors in the area, we finished up with 10 clubs. An amazing response. But yes, well, we formed a very strong junior rugby union, and I was president of that for 9 years. Of that, that's why I more or less terminated temporarily my time with the Parramatta Senior Club. But and that was very rewarding, because only a few years later on we became the top team in the Shute Shield, and we won 2 competitions with playing all players from that came up from Parramatta Juniors.
Yeah.
So that was wonderful for the club. And then.
So what position did you hold then? Like I said, you did best and fairest, but you were.
I did.
Because I remember you being there, like being the grandfather, not the grandfather, but the very.
Yeah. But I was president of the Parramatta Juniors. I was the coach of Marylands Juniors. I was picking, that's on the senior football now, picking the best and fairest every Saturday afternoon at whichever game I was asked to officiate at. And my rugby has played a very, very big part in my life. It really has. And it's had its good parts and now and again a little bit of not unhappiness, but you go through it.
But sadness, yeah,
part of life.
We're talking about Ray Price being one of the best players you've seen play, and he was a Parramatta junior, and you were in the first premiership or first side that
played in the grand final.
Played in the grand final.
Yeah.
And then we've seen the next time was in 1974 when the juniors started to come through. So what was your feeling about the 74, 75 grand finals, 84 grand finals, and then we won 3 in 97, 85 and 86, and most of them were juniors?
Well, the fact that they've come through our juniors, because before we've never had juniors to call on. Right from the time right from the club reformed in 1934, there's never had any juniors to draw upon except the King's School and Parramatta High School. And even the thought of forming juniors in Parramatta, I used to tell John Carroll that that's quite impossible. This is a rugby league area. But when we called all these meetings to form these junior clubs, I was completely wrong. There were that many kids. I mean, they were jumping out of the ground during that that time of the baby boomers, and we had no trouble in forming these clubs. And clubs like Dundas, Marylands, North Mead, they were filling 6 to 8 teams in different ages, and everything went so well. And for the fact that we got these kids who had progressed through the juniors and then into the Parramatta side. We got them into making a great team of Parramatta. And as soon as they started coming through with your Prices and oh dear,
Mickey Martin and
Martin and Butch Walker and Ricky Andrews and Greg Hackett, that kept us really on top for the next 10 years.
Did you feel a degree of satisfaction having
yeah.
formed the juniors?
Oh yes, that's always been my greatest satisfaction, probably, of forming the juniors in Parramatta, and we couldn't have done it otherwise. Couldn't have survived otherwise.
And it seems to be, the juniors have dropped away now with the AFL and the soccer and all the other things too. So there's not as many. Some of those clubs you've talked about are folded.
Well, you see, those baby boomers grew up, and strangely enough, most of them moved out of the Parramatta district, and then we got a period, which is still going, of immigration coming into the Parramatta area, which has kept on getting greater and greater, and the junior clubs, what is left of them now, find it very hard to even survive.
To attract them. Yeah. Just moving along, having played for Parramatta, I'm just sort of some quick questions now.
You left the curly ones to last.
Oh no! Just what was the best thing about playing for Parramatta? Most people say camaraderie, or is it
Well, Parramatta.
You played for a long time.
Parramatta hasn't been the most successful team. I would say would lead in the point score as far as team spirit, happiness, cordiality. Call it what you like, but there's always been a very, very good spirit in Parramatta. Even in the 50s, when we were right down, when I just happened to turn up again in my late 30s, there were people like Phil Curnow. Now, Phil Curnow was a centre. I don't know where he came from. In the first year he was with Parramatta, he composed the Parramatta Club song.
Oh, okay.
And that was in 1958. Phil Curnow composed the Parramatta song, which is still being sung today with varying degrees.
I was going to say that.
I tell you what, the present crop of footballers are much better footballers than they are seniors.
Yeah, because if they don't get the first line right, that usually throws them off the
whole. They can make a lot of row. But the point we were talking about, the cordiality and team spirit, meant a lot in those days, because we weren't a club which was always on top. We'd be through our very hard times and would pull through it.
Yeah. I guess that leads to what you remember at your teammates. You've got lifelong friends through when you went away with Australia. Is that the same with Parramatta too? Some of the players you...
Yeah. Well, yeah, strangely enough, I'd be the oldest one. I don't know of any other surviving member as old as I am that played with Parramatta.
So you never played with Alan Manette?
Well, Alan was coming in.
Or okay,
as I was going out. Yeah, he was. But as far as the Wallabies are concerned, there are still 6 of the 30 players still alive, and which would include Nick Shahady, Arthur Buchan, Terry McBride, Kevin Berg. There's one I've missed out. Myself. Better not forget myself. There were 6 of us. The 6 were still surviving. I'm the eldest.
So Arthur Buchan, I'm certain he's the one who used to sign the cheques for all the teachers, was he?
That's right. He was a big shot in the Department of
I remember having, when I first got my first cheque, Arthur Buchan was signed on the bottom of it. Right.
He was a marvellous.
He's tied up with Eastwood, wasn't he?
No, he started off with, he played with St George, he played for Randwick. I think he may have started with University, I'm not quite sure. Finished up with St George anyway. Marvellous lock forward.
So any stand-up memories for Parramatta that, in all those years that you've been associated? So we just talked about the satisfaction of the juniors coming through, and the 3 premierships in there. Going
back before that, there was a fella, well-known throughout rugby, an ex-Waratah, a big noise, but a wonderful bloke, and his name was Brian Palmer. Brian always had a lot to say, but he was a wonderful coach. He coached the Wallabies when he was close to 70 years of age. He's passed away now, of course, but a great bloke.
I heard his son's middle name was Rugby. But
Brian Rugby Palmer, that's right, yes. But he was one of the, it was outstanding identity, let's put it that way, in the club in those days.
Well, that led to the next question. So, is there a coach? Is he your favourite coach that coached you, or made a difference to your life, or is it?
Well, Palmer, he would rank as the best coach. I had been the pleasure of being in the team under him. Yeah, he was quite good. He was a 1927 Waratah, lived for football, and suffered no nonsense. Certainly had a loud bellow. You could hear him from here to Wynyard Station, but a good bloke.
I guess now moving to the professional game and having played in the Bledisloe Cup against New Zealand and that, what do you think about professionalism, and how do we ever going to beat the Kiwis? Or is that there's an acronym in there, there's two.
There's a lot to say about that. First of all, about professionalism. Professionalism was something that had to come because the Australian or World Rugby Union was advancing and demanding so much of players. That much that they couldn't afford to possibly keep up with the program that the home unions or the rugby world circles could do. It would come to a stage where if the game didn't go professional, the fellas would have to give it away and say, well, I can't put up with the program. Who's going to pay me? How am I going to live? I can't live on love alone, on rugby alone. So professional football had to come. And now, or put it this way, in the olden days, we would average about 3 test matches a year. We would see England come over to Australia once every 10, maybe 20 years. We'd see the Springboks used to come over to Australia, play a series of games in Australia before going on to the their main part of the tour, which is New Zealand. So there wasn't a great deal of international rugby played. Now, immediately went professional, money came into it. Now we have at least 15 international test matches played every year. We had nothing like the Super 12s, or start off as Super 16s, whatever it is. There was none of that. There was no hopping over to England to play a test match against Wales and England and then coming back and being back within a fortnight. The thing that's made the big difference to international football, of course, is the aeroplane, air travel. You can get teams at the other side of the world to play within a few days and be back home again to play with their club next Saturday. Wouldn't have been thought of that you would bring teams like Fiji, all the Pacific Islanders, Argentine. I mean, there couldn't possibly have been a Rugby World Cup, and look what has grown into. And really, air travel has got a lot to do with it because they can shift their players anywhere in the world in a very short time.
So what do we need to do now to beat New Zealand?
We've been trying to answer that question for at least 50 years. I've never seen a bad New Zealand team. We can say that. I've seen other teams, some better teams than others, but I've never seen a bad New Zealand.
You think it's their culture? Is it because it's one nation, one team type thing, or?
Well, it's in their blood. It's like winning a war. winning the Bledisloe Cup, and there's never ever any thought in a New Zealanders' mind that they're going to lose it. And this is a big thing. It's almost as if it's shameful to lose an international game, and they've lost a few.
I've never faced off against the haka. Is the haka? How do you feel when you were eyeballing?
I thought they should ban that. That's terrible. To make the opposition face you with their eyes hanging out and their tongues out here, and it's a definite advantage. And I think it should be shut out. Now there's many that will say, well, it's just entertainment, but not to the. They're building up their what is it? They're building up their attitude all the time. And you can't deny the fact that that is the case, because by the time the ball is kicked off, these blokes have worked themselves up into this, and they never take a time to warm up. They say, it's only warming up time. First 10 minutes, just warm up. No, not so with the All Blacks. The All Blacks did that warming up with the haka. And so it gives them 10 minutes of really top.
They've got the aggression, they're ready to go. Parramatta, the modern Parramatta, where do you think we're going with that? I mean, we've seen improvements in the last 2 or 3 years, but we've got a lot to do. So have your feelings about that as being patron?
Well, I'm very proud to be patron first up. My time with Parramatta goes back nearly I think it's over 70 years. It's a hard one, because the face of rugby in this Western area particularly is changing. We've seen more changes, and it's caused by the movement of population. And quite frankly, it's going to depend a lot on good management. I think that if we can't get the good management, solid management behind ourselves, no matter how good your players are, your club won't be strong. So in the foundation, to me, of a rugby club is not the good players, it's a good administration, and that is so in quite a lot of other situations involving clubs of all type. And so we've got a lot to do there, and I think we've got a lot to do player-wise. Our present group of players, I believe, have quite good ability, and their potential is quite good. But we've got to harness that potential that they have, and we've got to get the discipline moving. It was proved in the last 2 years that I've been along to see Parramatta matches that the willingness is there and the ability is there, but the discipline falls away quite remarkably. And I think that the first thing our coach should be aware of is the fact that discipline is something which must be treated very seriously.
Now, I guess we're coming to the end, but a person who's been, very strong in our club is a young person with Tafu Pelota now, and I know you've been tied up with our club almost your life. What do you think about Taf and his philosophy?
Well, I think Taf's a wonderful bloke. I really do. I'm not. He may listen to this, I don't know, but whether he listens or not doesn't make any difference. He's a great advertisement for our club, and I can only hope that his enthusiasm and the influence he has over players will continue on, because I think at the present moment that we depend upon Tafu to set a good example. He is doing so, and we want a few more Tafus around. They wouldn't go astray at all in our club at the present time.
Okay, Eric, in closing,
we've had
you've led a great life, and you are one of the true gentlemen of rugby, and is there any secrets you want to share with us? As I know you're aiming for 100 because fewer people live past 100, but is there anything that you could impart to us or would like to say? Or
No, that's the hardest question you've asked me all day. No, I think the good Lord gives us all a good life, and if we look after our lives as we've been given it, we should be very happy. And it's up to ourselves what we do with our lives. We can't throw the blame onto someone else if we're miserable, if we're not enjoying life. That's our own fault. But I think that's as fair enough answer as I can give you at the moment.
Well,
anyway,
it's a question of life will answer itself, isn't it? But what advice would you give to a young player starting out like you at 15 years of age and the journey it's taking you and weird through your rugby is weird through the whole of your life?
Well, he won't go through it because there'll never be another period like I have. But no, I admire the kids who can play sport, no matter what sport it is, play it cleanly, don't have any smudges on your reputation, don't cause it to be that way, because once you delve into the improper things of sport, you will lose all the satisfaction that you would gain otherwise.
Okay, Eric, I'd like to thank you very, very much for spending all that time with us.
Yes, we've had a pretty fair bash, haven't we?
You've done well. It's been really enjoyable. Thank you for that.
I tell you what, Peter, would you mind putting on the kettle? Thank you.